Pay attention to the woman in the hallway of 14 Callaway Ridge Road. It's 10:47 p.m. on a Friday. Her name is Claire Weston. She is 31, a dental hygienist who has spent the last 6 weeks dreaming of this silence. She is holding a glass of Cabernet in her left hand, feeling the soft wool of her socks against the polished pine floors. Behind her, the fire is a low, comforting hum. Everything about this house is perfect. The reviews were right. It is genuine seclusion. Now, watch her hand. Claire leans over the pedestal sink to splash her face. She reaches up to adjust her hair, and her knuckles brush the surface of the silver-framed mirror. She stops. She doesn't pull away. She frowns because the glass isn't cold. It's vibrating. Just a faint, arrhythmic thrum, the sound of a person breathing on the other side of a thin sheet of silvered glass. She presses her palm flat against the center of the mirror. It isn't just room temperature, it is 98 degrees. It is the exact temperature of a human body. Claire looks at her own reflection, at her own eyes, and realizes she isn't looking at herself. She is looking at a mask. She notices the seam, a hairline gap on the left side, invisible unless you're looking for a way out, or a way in. She sets her wine glass on the floor. Her hands are shaking, but her movement is fluid. She hooks her fingernails into that hairline gap and pulls. The mirror doesn't creak. It has been oiled recently. It swings open with the silent weight of a vault door, and that's when she smells it. Not the pine of the mountains, not the wood smoke from the living room. She smells steam, soy sauce, and the sharp metallic scent of a space that hasn't seen sunlight in years. On the small wooden table inside, a bowl of rice sits next to a glowing lantern. A plastic fork is still perched on the rim. A thin wisp of steam is still curling into the air. Someone was eating here 30 seconds ago, and as Claire stands paralyzed in the doorway, she realizes the only way out of this room is the door she is currently standing in, which means whoever was eating is still in the house. October 7th, 6 weeks earlier, Claire Weston had found the Callaway Ridge listing on a travel blog called Southern Slow Down in late August. The post was titled 10 Mountain Rentals That Actually Deliver, and the Callaway property was number 4 on the list. The photographs showed pine floors, exposed ceiling beams, or a wraparound porch looking out over a folded ridge of Blue Ridge hardwoods already beginning to turn. The listing on the rental platform described 3 bedrooms, a wood-burning fireplace, a clawfoot bathtub, and what the host called genuine seclusion. The price was $194 per night. There were 23 reviews. All were positive. The average rating was 4.8 stars. The host's name on the platform was listed as Thomas Veal. His profile photograph showed a man in his mid-50s standing on what appeared to be the same wraparound porch, arms folded, smiling. His bio described him as a retired contractor who had built the Callaway property himself in 2009 and began renting it after his children left home. He had been hosting on the platform since 2018. He had a verified identity badge and a superhost designation. Claire sent the link to her boyfriend, Daniel Marsh, at 9:14 p.m. on a Tuesday. Daniel was 34, a high school history teacher who coached junior varsity soccer and had been asking about a mountain trip since January. They had canceled twice, once for a funeral in February, once in June when Claire's schedule wouldn't allow it. Daniel responded to her message in 4 minutes. "Book it," he wrote. She did. They left Raleigh at 2:45 p.m. on the first Friday in October. Traffic was light through Winston-Salem and heavier past Statesville. They stopped once at a gas station and once at a roadside produce stand where Claire bought sourwood honey and Daniel bought a paper bag of Honeycrisp apples. They arrived at the property at 6:22 p.m. The key was in a lockbox beside the front door. The code sent by Thomas Veal via the platform's messaging system 2 days before their arrival. The house was exactly as photographed. Pine floors, exposed beams, a stone fireplace in the living room with a full rack of split hardwood stacked beside it. The kitchen was stocked with dish soap and coffee filters and a welcome basket containing local jam, a small block of sharp cheddar, and a handwritten note from the host that read, "Enjoy the quiet. It's the best thing we've got up here." Daniel read the note and stuck it to the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a black bear. They made pasta. They opened the wine. Daniel got the fire going. Claire walked the property before it got fully dark. The porch, the yard's edge, the narrow gravel path that curved around toward the back of the house where a detached storage shed sat padlocked. She photographed the tree line in the last of the orange light. She came back inside. They ate at the kitchen table and talked about nothing that mattered. Oh, it was the first evening in months that felt genuinely uncomplicated. At 10:31 p.m., Daniel fell asleep in the armchair near the fire with an open book on his chest. Claire put a blanket over him. She turned off the kitchen light and walked down the hall toward the bathroom to wash her face. 10:47 p.m. The mirror swung inward on concealed hinges mounted inside the wall cavity. It moved smoothly, with the kind of resistance that suggested regular use rather than a door rusted shut from years of disuse. Claire stood in the bathroom doorway and looked at what was on the other side. The room was approximately 12 feet wide and 9 feet deep. The ceiling was low, maybe 6.5 feet, and finished with drywall and paint the same shade of off-white as the rest of the house. A twin mattress sat on a low wooden platform along the right wall, made up with a fitted sheet, a wool blanket folded at the foot, and a single pillow in a white case. A small wooden table stood against the opposite wall with a battery-powered camping lantern on it, switched on, casting a warm amber light across the room. On the table beside the lantern sat a white ceramic bowl. Inside the bowl were the remains of a meal, rice, something dark and sauced, a plastic fork resting across the rim. Claire stood completely still and watched the steam rising from the bowl. The food was still warm. On the far wall, above the head of the mattress, someone had written directly on the drywall in black marker. Not graffiti, not scattered. A list written in a neat vertical column, each entry on its own line. Claire counted them without touching anything. 17 names, first names only, some in capitals, some in lowercase, some underlined once. She did not go further into the room. She backed out of the bathroom, pulled the mirror closed behind her, walked to the armchair where Daniel was sleeping, and put her hand on his shoulder. "Daniel," she said. He woke immediately. 11:03 p.m. Daniel walked the hallway twice before Claire pushed the mirror open to show him. He stood in the bathroom doorway, looking into the room for a long time without speaking. Then he pulled out his phone and called 911. The Watauga County Sheriff's Dispatch received the call at 11:09 p.m. The dispatcher took the address, confirmed the nature of the concern, and advised Daniel and Claire to exit the property and wait outside without disturbing anything further. 2 deputies were dispatched from the Boone substation. They arrived at 11:34 p.m. Deputy Marcus Trelaw was the first through the front door. His partner, Deputy Susan Falk, remained outside with Daniel and Claire, who were sitting on the hood of Daniel's car wrapped in a fleece blanket from the back seat. Trelaw walked the first floor, confirmed it was clear, and made his way down the hall to the bathroom. He pushed the mirror open. He stood in the doorway and looked at the room for the same wordless moment that Daniel had. He did not enter. He photographed from the threshold. He radioed Falk. He said, "We need the detective on call, and we need forensics, and we need them now." October 8th, the investigation begins. Detective Rachel Voss with the Watauga County Sheriff's Office arrived at Callaway Ridge Road at 1:17 a.m. She was 43 years old and had worked criminal investigations in the high country for 11 years. She had handled domestic cases and drug cases and 2 homicides. She had not handled anything that looked like this. The forensics team from Boone arrived at 1:40 a.m. They worked the hidden room for 4 hours. Voss stood at the mirror threshold and listened to what they found. The room showed evidence of sustained habitation. Not recent habitation in the sense of a one-night shelter, the kind of habitation measured in months. The mattress platform was bolted to the floor with hardware consistent with permanent installation. The walls showed scuff marks and faint impressions at mattress height consistent with a body sleeping against them repeatedly over time. A small wooden crate tucked beneath the mattress platform contained a folded set of clothing. 2 t-shirts, 1 pair of work pants, a pair of socks rolled together, and a paperback novel with a cracked spine and a bus ticket from Kingsport, Tennessee to Boone, North Carolina, tucked inside the back cover. The ticket was dated August 19th, 7 weeks prior. The camping lantern was a model available at any sporting goods retailer. It ran on 4 D-cell batteries. A fresh set was inside it. The bowl on the table held rice with canned black beans and hot sauce. A forensic thermometer confirmed the food temperature at 91 degrees Fahrenheit. The meal had been prepared within the previous 2 hours. Whoever had been in this room had left it recently. The mirror had been their exit, or they had heard Claire coming down the hall and used some other way out that investigators had not yet identified. The most significant finding was on the wall. The 17 names written in black permanent marker above the head of the mattress had been written at different times. The ink color varied between entries, some deeper black, some faded to gray, indicating the list had been added to over an extended period rather than written all at once. The names were in no discernible alphabetical or chronological order. Some were written larger than others. 2 names near the bottom had been circled. Detective Voss photographed the wall from multiple angles. By 3 a.m., she had run the first 6 names through the National Missing and Unidentified Persons system. 4 of the 6 returned results. October 8th, 6:15 a.m., Detective Voss made 3 phone calls before the sun came up. The first was to Thomas Veal, the listed host of the Callaway Ridge property. She reached him on a mobile number after 2 attempts. Veal answered on the 4th ring, his voice heavy with sleep. Voss identified herself and explained there had been an incident at his rental property. Veal asked if there had been damage. Voss said she needed him at the property by 9 a.m. Veal said he could be there by 9:30. Voss said 9 a.m. would be better. The second call was to the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation's regional field office in Asheville. She spoke to a duty agent and described the room and the names. The agent said he would make some calls and get back to her. The third call was to a detective in Sullivan County, Tennessee, named Harold Pruitt, whom Voss had met twice at a regional law enforcement conference in Hickory. She had kept his card. She called his mobile directly. When he answered, she asked him what he knew about a woman named Marisol Cuevas. There was a silence of approximately 4 seconds. Then Pruitt said, "Where did that name come from?" Voss told him. Pruitt said he would be in Boone by noon. Thomas Veal, 9:17 a.m. Thomas Veal arrived at Callaway Ridge Road driving a white F250 with a magnetic contractor's logo on the door. He was 57 years old with a gray beard and the kind of hands that came from decades of construction work, thick-knuckled, permanently calloused. He looked at the 2 sheriff's vehicles and the SBI forensics van in his driveway, and his expression shifted from puzzled to afraid in the time it took him to put the truck in park. Detective Voss walked him through the house. She showed him the bathroom mirror. She showed him the room. Thomas Veal looked at the room for a long time. Then he sat down on the hallway floor and put his face in his hands. It was not the reaction of a man concealing knowledge. It was the reaction of a man whose house had just become unrecognizable to him. Over the next 90 minutes, Voss and 2 SBI agents interviewed Veal thoroughly. His account was consistent and detailed, and it checked out. He had built the house in 2009. He had the original blueprints filed with Watauga County. The hidden room did not appear on them, and the wall that contained it did not appear on them. It had been added after construction. Veal said he had not entered the bathroom hallway in over a year. He managed the property remotely and paid a local cleaning service to turn it over between guests. The cleaning service, a 2-person operation run by a woman in Boone named Greta Sim, was contacted and confirmed they cleaned the main rooms, the kitchen, and the bathrooms. They had never noticed anything unusual about the bathroom mirror. They had never pushed it. Voss asked Veal when the last renovation work had been done on the property. Veal said 2020 a deck repair and some ceiling work after a water intrusion from a February ice storm. He had hired a local contractor for the job. Voss asked for the contractor's name. Veal said his name was Ray Cutler, and he had come recommended by a neighbor. He had done solid work. He had been friendly, professional, thorough. He had asked a lot of questions about the house, when it was built, what the original floor plan looked like, whether Veal had considered adding any additional rooms for storage. Veal had shown him the blueprints. Veal said he hadn't thought anything of it at the time. He hadn't heard from Ray Cutler since the job was finished in April of 2020. The wall. October 9th, by the following morning, SBI analysts had cross-referenced all 17 names on the wall against state and federal missing persons databases, open case files, and law enforcement bulletins circulated across North Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, South Carolina, and Georgia. 12 of the 17 names returned confirmed matches to active missing persons cases. The cases ranged from 8 months to 4 years old. All 12 were women. Ages ranged from 22 to 41. They had disappeared from different locations: a trailhead parking lot in Unicoi County, Tennessee, a bar in Asheville, North Carolina, a grocery store parking lot in Abingdon, Virginia, a rest area off Interstate 26 in Spartanburg County, South Carolina. No 2 disappearances had occurred in the same county. No 2 had been previously connected to each other by any law enforcement agency. They had been treated as separate, unrelated cases. The 5 remaining names did not appear in any database. That could mean they were not reported missing. It could mean they had not yet been identified. It could mean they were not from the United States. Voss flagged all 5 for international cross-referencing through Interpol. On the wall, the 2 circled names were Marisol Cuevas and a woman named Amber Dix. Marisol Cuevas, age 29, had been reported missing from a gas station in Elizabethton, Tennessee, on March 3, 2022. Her car had been found in the lot 3 days later with her keys on the driver's seat. She had not been seen since. Detective Harold Pruitt had worked her case for 14 months without a viable suspect. Amber Dix, age 34, had been reported missing from a campground near Marion, North Carolina, on July 11, 2023. Her tent had been found standing. Her hiking boots were inside it. Her car was at the trailhead. She had not been seen since. Both women remained missing as of October 2024. Both of their names were circled twice. October 10th, the name Ray Cutler was not in itself unusual. There were 11 men named Ray Cutler, or Raymond Cutler, in North Carolina's state records. 4 had current driver's licenses. 2 of those had addresses in the High Country region. One was 74 years old. The other was listed at an address in Newland that turned out to be a vacant lot. The contractor's license associated with the Ray Cutler, who had worked on the Callaway property, was issued in 2019 and listed a business address in Spruce Pine. SBI agents drove to Spruce Pine on October 10th and found a post office box with a forwarding address that led to another post office box in Johnson City, Tennessee. Detective Pruitt had jurisdiction in Sullivan County, Tennessee. He coordinated with Washington County and Carter County to run the second address. It also went nowhere. ESBI forensic analyst Dana Cho ran the fingerprints lifted from the hidden room's surfaces against AFIS, the Automated Fingerprint Identification System, on October 11th. She ran them twice. The result was the same both times. The prints belonged to a man named Calvin Roy Mercer, age 44, formerly of Irwin, Tennessee. Mercer had a criminal history, a domestic assault charge from 2014 that resulted in probation, a stalking charge filed in 2016 by a former girlfriend and subsequently dropped. No prison time, no registered sex offenses. His last known address was a rental property on Highway 19 West outside Unicoi. Calvin Mercer had been declared legally dead on February 7, 2021, following a single-vehicle accident on State Route 107 in Jefferson County, Tennessee. His car had gone off an embankment near the Nolichucky River. The vehicle was recovered. A body had not been. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation had investigated and ultimately filed an administrative death determination based on the severity of the terrain, the vehicle's condition, and the absence of any financial or cellular activity in the 36 months following the accident. His death certificate was filed in Jefferson County in February of 2021. Calvin Roy Mercer had been living in a hidden room inside a mountain vacation rental, approximately 11 miles from the last known location of Marisol Cuevas, for an indeterminate period of time. And he was still alive. October 11th through 14th, the Watauga County Sheriff's Office, the SBI, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, and the FBI's Charlotte Field Office coordinated a 4-day search of the Blue Ridge Parkway corridor, the Pisgah National Forest boundary, and the network of fire roads and unpaved access routes in the high-elevation terrain surrounding Caldwell County, McDowell County, Avery County, and Mitchell County. They found his camp on October 14th. It was located in a decommissioned Forest Service maintenance structure 3 miles off a logging road east of Grandfather Mountain, a low cinder block building that had once housed equipment for trail maintenance crews, abandoned since 2015. The padlock on the door had been replaced with a new one. Inside, investigators found a sleeping setup, a 2-burner propane stove, 5 weeks of canned food, a hand-cranked radio, a solar charging panel, and 2 prepaid mobile phones. One phone was active, the other had been factory reset and wiped. On a shelf above the sleeping area, I lined up with a precision that struck every investigator who saw them as deeply unsettling, were 17 small notebooks. Each was identical, the same brand, the same size, the same black cover. Each had a first name written on its spine in the same black permanent marker that had been used on the wall at Callaway Ridge. 12 of the names matched the missing women. The investigators stood in the cold of that cinder block room and did not speak for a long moment. Calvin Mercer was not at the camp. A forensic assessment determined he had been gone for approximately 36 to 48 hours, likely since the night Claire Weston opened the mirror. He had heard her coming down the hall, and he had run. October 15th through 22nd. The contents of the notebooks took 2 FBI analysts 7 days to fully document and catalog. Each notebook contained detailed observations of a specific woman. The entries were written in a consistent hand, calm and methodical, with dates, times, locations, and physical descriptions. They documented routines, habits, patterns of movement. They documented where each woman shopped, what she drove, when she left for work, when she returned, who visited her home, and how often. Several notebooks included hand-drawn maps of neighborhoods, parking lots, trailheads, building exteriors. Some contained photographs printed on thin paper and taped to the pages, taken at distance with a telephoto lens, women at gas stations, grocery stores, hiking trails, unaware they were being watched. The notebooks did not describe acts of violence. They described access. They described opportunity windows. They described the careful patient process of learning a woman's life well enough to identify the moment she would be alone and vulnerable, and unlikely to be immediately missed. The 12 notebooks that corresponded to missing women all ended the same way. The final entry in each was a single line, a date, and the word, "done." The 5 notebooks with names that had not matched any database were labeled but contained earlier stage observations, surveillance notes that had not yet progressed to a final entry. The FBI immediately prioritized identifying those 5 women and warning them. 3 were identified within 72 hours through vehicle registration cross-referencing with locations mentioned in the notes. All 3 were alive. All 3 were contacted by law enforcement. All 3 had no knowledge they had been watched. 2 of the 5 could not be identified. The investigation into those names remains open. October through November, the FBI issued a federal arrest warrant for Calvin Roy Mercer on October 16th on charges including unlawful flight, identity fraud, false death documentation, and suspicion of multiple counts of kidnapping. His photograph, from a 2016 Tennessee DMV record, was circulated to law enforcement agencies in 7 states. Mercer was not a large man. He was 5 feet 10 inches tall, 170 pounds, with brown hair he reportedly wore long, and a beard he had grown since faking his death. He had no current vehicle registered to any identity. He moved on foot, by bus, by hitchhiking. He knew remote terrain. He had spent 3 years perfecting the ability to exist without a digital footprint. Detective Pruitt, who had worked Marisol Cuevas's case for 14 months and felt its weight every day, described Mercer in a press briefing as the most patient predator he had encountered in 22 years of law enforcement. He chose his properties carefully, Pruitt said. He chose his access points carefully. He chose the kind of rentals that were remote, that turned over guests regularly, that had hosts who managed from a distance. He modified the structures during legitimate renovation work so that no one would know the modification had been made. And then he used them as a base from which to study, plan, and move. He had apparently worked as a contractor, legitimately, for the 3 years before faking his death. It was how he learned to build walls that didn't appear on blueprints. It was how he learned the feel of a house, where the gaps were, where the heat collected, where a person could disappear inside a structure that no one else knew had a second interior. Investigators identified 4 additional properties in North Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia, where Mercer had performed renovation work under various names between 2017 and 2020. All 4 properties were inspected for concealed rooms. 2 contained them. Both rooms showed evidence of habitation. Neither contained any additional notebooks or evidence that connected them to specific victims. The question of what had happened to 12 women remained unanswered. November 3rd, Calvin Roy Mercer was apprehended at a Greyhound bus terminal in Huntsville, Alabama at 4:55 a.m. on November 3rd, 2024. He was purchasing a ticket to Memphis. The terminal agent recognized him from a law enforcement bulletin posted 2 weeks earlier and triggered the silent alert protocol. 2 Huntsville Police Department officers detained him before he reached the boarding platform. He did not resist. He sat down on a bench when asked, placed his hands in his lap, and waited. He was carrying a backpack containing 3 days of clothing, $400 in cash, a prepaid phone, and a black notebook. The notebook contained a name that had not appeared on the wall at Callaway Ridge Road. The FBI declined to release that name publicly pending investigation. November 5th through 9th. FBI's Special Agent Diane Kowalski led the interrogation at a federal detention facility in Nashville over 4 days. Mercer had an appointed defense attorney present at all sessions. He was cooperative in the sense that he spoke. He was uncooperative in the sense that he answered almost nothing directly. He confirmed he had been living at the Callaway Ridge property on and off since September. He confirmed he had built the room during the renovation work in 2020. He confirmed the notebooks were his. He confirmed the names on the wall were women he had, in his words, spent time studying. He denied killing anyone. When asked about Marisol Cuevas, he said he remembered her. When asked what had happened to her, he said that was a more complicated question than it appeared. When Agent Kowalski pressed him, his attorney intervened. Mercer sat back in his chair and looked at the middle distance and said nothing further on the subject. When asked about Amber Dix, he said the same thing. He remembered her. The question was complicated. His attorney intervened. Investigators noted that both the women's names had been circled on the wall. They noted that no other names had been circled. They noted that Mercer had chosen to circle those 2 specifically and had chosen not to explain why. Whether that distinction represented something he had done differently in those 2 cases, or something that had happened differently, was a question the interrogation never resolved. Mercer was indicted on November 12th on 12 counts of kidnapping, 12 counts of stalking, 2 counts of suspected homicide pending further evidence, identity fraud, obstruction, and multiple federal charges related to the false death documentation. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit worked with the notebooks to build geographic probability models for where Mercer may have taken the missing women. 11 locations of interest across a 90-mile corridor of the southern Appalachian Range. Search teams from 3 states executed ground searches at every site between November and January. On December 4th, in a creek drainage below an old fire road in the Cherokee National Forest outside Tellico Plains, Tennessee, search teams found human remains. Forensic analysis confirmed they belonged to Marisol Cuevas. Cause of death could not be determined. She had been there approximately 2.5 years. On January 17th, remains found in a remote hollow off Forest Road 106 in McDowell County, North Carolina, were confirmed as Amber Dix. Approximately 15 months. Cause of death: blunt force trauma. The remaining 10 women have not been found. Detective Pruitt drove to Patricia Cuevas's house in Johnson City on December 5th. She opened the door before he finished knocking. She looked at him and said, "You found her." It was not a question. He nodded. She asked if her daughter had suffered. He said he didn't know. She thanked him and asked for a moment before she let anyone else in. He stood on the porch and waited and looked at the street and said nothing. The trial of Calvin Roy Mercer began in federal court in Asheville on April 8, 2025. Claire Weston testified on the 3rd day. She described the hallway, the warmth of the mirror, pushing it open and seeing the room and the lamp still burning, and the steam rising from the bowl of food and the wall of names. She was composed and precise, and she looked at the jury when she spoke. Mercer watched her throughout with an expression courtroom observers described the same way: patient. as if he were still studying. The jury deliberated 14 hours. On April 29th, Calvin Roy Mercer was convicted on all counts. 2 counts of second-degree murder, 12 counts of stalking and kidnapping, federal charges including identity fraud and obstruction. He showed no reaction when the verdict was read. He was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms plus 140 additional years. Federal Judge Lawrence Aldrin looked at Mercer and said, "You cannot leave a lamp burning and expect no one to follow the light." Mercer said nothing. Detective Harold Pruitt retired in March 2025. His last official act was to sit with Patricia Cuevas at her kitchen table for 2 hours and answer every question she had about what happened to her daughter. When he left, she walked him to the door. She said, "Thank you for not forgetting her." He said, "That was never a possibility. The 10 remaining women are still missing. Their families still wait." The FBI task force still searches the hollows and creek drainages of the southern mountains looking for anything that shouldn't be there. In an archive in Raleigh, behind climate-controlled doors on a shelf marked with a federal case number, a piece of drywall holds 17 names in black marker. 12 of them still need answers. Pay attention to the name written first, written largest, written years before any of the others. It matches no database in any state. The investigation is ongoing.